Welcome to Provoking Peace, a podcast by the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, where we bring Muslim and Jewish women and our allies into conversation to explore what it really takes to build peace in ourselves, our communities, and our world.
We go beyond the headlines to speak with people who are living this work every day: activists, educators, artists, faith leaders, and more.
We're here to ask bold questions, listen deeply, and invite you to join us in disrupting assumptions and stereotypes, one Muslim and
one Jewish woman at a time.
Good morning or good afternoon for Vladimir and Dževada.
Happy to be here.
Good afternoon.
Great to see you both. And Assalamu alaikum, Dževada. I just want to.
Alaikum salam.
And so we'll start with some introductions, and I just will start with sort of why we are doing this with the two of you, right? So I just want to preface it and say that, usually the interaction between Muslims and Jews, especially nowadays, is portrayed or referred to only through the events of the past century in the Middle East, or as people in Palestine and Israel would say, in the land. So but I am, we tend to forget and sort of neglect centuries of interactions, life together, and many places where culturally, economically, and socially, Jews and Muslims lived together, worked well, and even thrived together. So having two of you today is going to help us kind of dig into some of that history and also reflect on what's happening now in Bosnia, and learn from both of you where these two communities are at in the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you very much.
So I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Dževada Garić, who is a university lecturer in international relations at the Sarajevo School of Science and Technology, and she also serves as the Chief of Office for International Cooperation at the Islamic Community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She has authored numerous publications, notable among them being Coexistence of Jews and Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Examples of Tolerance from the 16th Century to Today.
And it's my pleasure to introduce... Oh, okay, here's the book.
Perfect!
That's great. We'll also put some links and all that to the book itself, so people will have opportunity to order it and learn more about it. Thank you for sharing that. And it's my pleasure to introduce Vladimir Andrle, who was born in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and graduated from the Music Academy of University of Sarajevo. He's a member of Jewish Diplomatic Corps at the World Jewish Congress, Committee for Dialogue of the Srebrenica Memorial Center, the Implementation Council of the Declaration on Constitutional and Other Reforms of Bosnia and Herzegovina, on the path to the EU and NATO. In April 2022, he was appointed president of La Benevolentia. The focus of his activism is in human rights, philanthropy, and dialogue.
Thank you, Tahia.
We're so happy to have you both here. And we wanted to first ask a little bit about both of your interfaith work. What drew you to interfaith work, and why was it important to you to have that as a significant part of your life?
Okay, thank you very much, Alison. By the way, it's great to see you again, Alison. So it was a pleasure meeting you last summer in Sarajevo.
You too. I'm so glad we were able to do this.
Yes. Well, I'm evidently, my origins are from Bosnia and Herzegovina, a country that has always been a multi-religious country where Catholics, Orthodox Christians, Jews, and Muslims have always lived with each other, not next to each other. And I grew up actually in Germany. So part of my life, I lived in Germany from the age of 4 until the end of my studies. But I've always lived with this identity of being a Bosnian Muslim. In a German context, we regularly came to Bosnia to visit our relatives. And then in addition, even in where I come from, northwestern Bosnia, Teslić, this is a mixed city like all the cities actually in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So for me, it was while walking through the streets of where my relatives live, we always had as well Catholic and Orthodox neighbors. So having the experience of interreligious dialogue on a daily basis, something we did not name it. You just grow up with it. It's your daily life to share happy moments, but as well sad moments, to share as well, celebrate holidays together, celebrate birthdays together is something that I and people in Bosnia live with, have grown up with. And then particularly in the 1990s, where I was already an adult person, during the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, during the aggression against the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where religion was largely manipulated, instrumentalized for these ideologies, horrific ideologies that existed during these years, and which are very much as well still alive, unfortunately, today. And I realized that me as a person coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, but as well as a pious person, where I believe in reading the sources of Islam, the Quran, and the tradition of the Prophet, I know that diversity, that having on this earth as well human beings all created by God, that they might have different identities, but our purpose is to travel all over the world, to meet these people, and to find, as we say in the source of Islam, a common word between us. So basically a common denominator where we can agree on it, or we might call it as well universal values. But then as well as a scholar, as a historian, and as a scholar of international relations, I did my PhD on geopolitics of the late 19th and beginning of 20th century. And my research was how geopolitics has influenced Muslim communities in the Balkans. And I realized how important this legacy of the Balkans, this legacy of Bosnia and Herzegovina, this multi-religious coexistence, living together, this, as I gave the title to my book, Shared History and Everyday Existence of Muslims and Jews in Bosnia and Herzegovina in this case, but in general as well, how important this is to talk about it, how interreligious dialogue, interfaith dialogue is important, particularly in times of crises. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, unfortunately, many still talk about a post-conflict society. I rather disagree. I think we are much ahead, but some elements of our history are kind of marginalized. And with the help of my work, with the help of my research, I try to put the focus related to Bosnia and Herzegovina about this rich cultural heritage as Bosnia and Herzegovina has, this heritage which implies this closeness of different religious communities.
Thank you so
You
much.
know,
That's
as
so beautiful.
Dževada underlined,
Thank you.
interreligious and intercultural dialogue is the way of living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is something what we cannot undermine in any case, especially today where the whole world is polarized, especially between the Jewish and Muslim community. But living in Sarajevo and living in Bosnia and Herzegovina basically means that you are feeling really close with your neighbors, and your neighbors are Muslims, are Catholics, are Jewish and Orthodox as well. Sorry for that. My first recollections, are basically coming from La Benevolentia Sunday School, where I was a little kid, and one of the first one of the kids who were participating there during the war, and I met there in the Sunday school, which was a Jewish school promoting Jewish faith, Jewish culture. I met some of the most wonderful people who were not only Jews, but also Catholics, also Muslims, and Orthodox people. And now imagining the future without these kind of living together way is unimaginable to me. So this is the base point of my activism when it comes to the interfaith and intercultural dialogue, which I'm working here through La Benevolencia, but also privately, in my life.
Could you explain a little bit about what La Benevolencia is?
Yes, so La Benevolencia is a Jewish cultural education and humanitarian society established and formed in Sarajevo in 1892. La Benevolencia throughout the history had very hectic history, meaning that it was first forbidden to work in 1941 when Ustašas came and started to govern on behalf of the Nazi Germany Sarajevo, but also in 1949, the beginning of the 1950s, where a socialistic and communist government basically forbid work of all national associations and societies. I need to underline this, that during the government of socialistic Yugoslavia, religious communities could work freely, if I can say it like that, meaning that they were not forbidden, but the national societies who are keeping the culture and everything what is all about the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina was basically forbidden to work, and it was unified in one common Yugoslavian society with the slogan of unity and brotherhood. In 1991, when democratic changes came to Bosnia and Herzegovina.
If you can just sort of a little bit of your own experience, and also something that is for those that don't know anything about Bosnia and Herzegovina and this interaction, if you could just sort of summarize it briefly.
Okay, Dževada.
Well, it's a history that lasts more than 500 years. It is a very close and warm history of intertwined, mixed parts of a Bosnian society. So, like Jews, like Muslims, like Catholics, like Orthodox, the same way, all of them build the Bosnian fabric. They have always lived in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and mostly peacefully. We had periods of war, unfortunately, the last from 1992, 1995, and then there were the two world wars, like all over the world. But mostly these adherents of these different religious communities lived in peace together and influenced each other. You cannot talk about the history of Bosnia, about the cultural heritage of Bosnia, without mentioning the input of Christian, Jewish, and Islamic religion. So Bosnia is indeed, it's a jewel in Europe, which is very often, unfortunately, neglected. Now we hear lots of news about politics, about these negative news, but Bosnia has so many other stories to tell. And this is why I'm so glad to share these stories with Vladimir, not the first time. So we're already a good team, actually. We traveled together and we had different already events together. So it's really, and thank you so much for allowing us to share this
Yes, I will say
history
I
of
will
this
answer your
podcast.
question, basically using the example of how different cultures, religious cultures, basically intertwined here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I will mention one of the most popular traditional Bosnian songs, Kad ja pođoh na Bembašu, where the music is the coming from the religious tradition of the Jewish community, of the Sephardic Jewish community in total. And there are a number of these kind of examples where different cultures basically mixed up and created one interreligious mosaic of the cultural mosaic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As Dževada told, our relations did not start 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. It started around 500 years ago, where basically Sephardic Jews came from the Spain and were accommodated in all around Ottoman Empire, in Sarajevo as well. Thanks to that, Jewish community of Sarajevo, became one of the Sephardic centers in the Europe and in the world. Like usually people are calling Sarajevo European Jerusalem, and people are thinking that it is because of the proximity of different religious establishments, but it's not actually. The Sarajevo was called European Jerusalem because Sarajevo allowed Jews to fully extend the traditions of Sephardic community. Sarajevo was one of the places where Sephardic rabbis were going all around the world and served there in the Sephardic communities. The freedom of expression, of religious expression, is the fact that we are calling Sarajevo European Jerusalem. I know that we are now finding ourselves in the situation where Muslim Jewish connections are something what is I will say not normal as far as I can see. How the world is going, but in Sarajevo this is something what is normal, and this is something what is unbreakable in that sense. Not only the connections with the Muslim population, but also with the Catholic population and Orthodox population. Because now in today's term, and at least in the today's system of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Jews are living in Sarajevo, which is predominantly Muslim, but also living in Banja Luka, which is predominantly Orthodox Serb, and in Mostar, which is predominantly Catholic. So we are all living together, like that sense.
If I may add to what Vladimir said, so Vladimir stressed the Sephardic Ladino Jewish community, but we should as well let our listeners know that we have actually two Jewish communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So initially in the 16th century, as rightly stated, the Sephardi Jewish community, which was expelled from Andalusia and then came to the Ottoman Empire, came to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then we have in the late 19th century, as Bosnia was then administered by Austria-Hungary, and during these short 40 years of Austro-Hungarian presence, we have as well the settlement of Ashkenazi Jewish community to Bosnia, which I found very interesting during my research, that when they came in the 19th century, the Ashkenazi Jews, the Sephardi Jews weren't that close to them immediately. They considered them as foreigners, speaking a different language, and the Sephardic Jews already considered as indigenous Bosnian Jews. So, and then gradually, now, for example, today, the Ashkenazi synagogue is used today by both communities. But I would say the reason why the Sephardic Jews from the very beginning were accepted is as well because this is, let's say, if I may say so, the genetic fabric of the Bosnian society. They welcomed them even if they were of a different religion, but this is Bosnia, welcoming the other, whoever the other might be. And by the way, the Ladino language is still, in some families, is still spoken until today. So it is still present in the people's memories, even if it's more than 500 years ago.
Ooh, that's incredible.
I just want to say, Dževada, thank you for that addition. You read my mind. I was going to kind of take us a little bit to that direction. And just for those who are not familiar, so in Bosnia, we have Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, Sephardic coming from Spain, Ashkenazi coming from Central and Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And there is a third piece to this puzzle, which is Mizrahi Jews, right, who are from Arab majority countries in the world. So we have, and I think what you described, that interaction is familiar in different areas. That the sisterhood went to Morocco, went to Andalusia, so we kind of have similar experiences of that interaction between Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews and
yes, but I need to add.
Yes,
this division between the Jewish communities existed until 1940s. So basically, until the 1940s, we had the Sephardic Jewish community and also Ashkenazi Jewish community. But after the Holocaust, where 85% of the Jewish population were murdered and vanished throughout different concentration camps, we somehow merged and became the Jewish people in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So now we don't have this kind of, I mean, we have it traditionally, but we are respecting now at the Jewish community in our religious and traditions. We are respecting both traditions, and we are equally invested in all these traditions. You know, and this is important. This, I think, this is important to say.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that. And absolutely,
Exactly,
we're
yes.
talking more historical sort of perspective than current. Yes. Thank you, Vladimir. Or both of you.
Or both of you, for sure.
So this is an event in 1819, during still the Ottoman period, when the Sarajevo governor, the Ottoman governor, captured the Jewish elite in the Sephardic Jewish elite in Sarajevo, among them as well a rabbi, asking them a huge sum of money. So we are talking already, you see, it's 1819, it's the beginning of the 19th century. This is where gradually the Ottomans start to lose their strength in general. We were gradually starting to talk about the sick man on the Bosphorus. And we had in these years usually very unfriendly Ottoman governors in Bosnia, unfriendly towards the Bosnian peoples. And when these news spread in Sarajevo, that the Jewish elite were captured by this Ottoman government and brought to prison, and they were threatened to be decapitated. This is where the local Muslims sent letters to the Sultan informing him about these actions of the Sarajevo governor, and they literally took the arms and liberated their Jewish neighbors. So this shows it's not only empathy, you know, feeling sad about your neighbors that they're in prison. It's really taking action against injustice, not allowing that somebody does from abroad, from outside, does any harm to your neighbors who are evidently so close to you because you're willing to sacrifice your life to liberate these neighbors from prison. And since then, the Sephardic Jewish community celebrates every year Purim di Sarai, as they use this in Ladino language, meaning the liberation of Jews in Sarajevo. As far as I know, they're in different places, cities in some other parts of the world. There's this celebration as well. And in 2019, like 6 years ago, we had a project with the Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Jewish community in Bosnia and Herzegovina to mark these 200 years since this Sarajevo Purim. We organized a conference, international conference. We organized an exhibition, and we had as well a conference proceedings a little bit more expanded with other authors as well in Bosnian language, because this is our story. We didn't want, it was actually, the initiative was from the Islamic community because this is something we are very proud of. This shows the civil courage of the local Bosnian Muslim community. And we have such cases as well, which before I forget to mention this, during the Second World War, as Vladimir already announced, Bosnia and Herzegovina was occupied by the independent state of Croatia, which was a fascist puppet state, where vast persecution of the Jewish population happened, but as well of the Serb and the Roma population, which it literally decapitated the Jewish community. And in such a time of crisis, of fascist rule, we have in different cities all over Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Sarajevo, in Banja Luka, in Mostar, in Tuzla, and many other cities, we have the so-called resolutions. These were letters written by the Bosniak Bosnian Muslim elite, signed by them with name and surname. And you must have such a civil courage in such times to give to reveal your first and second family name, and to say we are against the persecution, against the mass killings, against the deportation of our neighbors. And this is the reason why, if you visited, and I think you did, the Jewish Museum in Sarajevo, which was actually used to be the first Sephardic synagogue. This is where we have a list of people listed in Yad Vashem until today, and among them as well many Bosnian Muslims.
Yes, this is something what I wanted to mention especially regarding the Second World War. So Sarajevo Purim is not the only example where we can see a courageous support of towards the Jewish community. We have some examples in the Second World War, not only by saving Haggadah, which is a well-known story all around the world, but also we have individual quests by the Muslim and Catholic and of course Catholic community, the people who were saving Jewish population here. So I wanted to mention, just to show the example, of the support, is the saving of the Kabilyo family during the Second World War by the Zeynep Hadraga family. By the way, if your audience is interested, we have a movie about this event called Sevap Mitzvah, which is a great short movie, around 25 minutes, basically showing the story, what was happening, but what happened after 50 years, this Jewish family, who in the meantime moved to Israel, saved the Hadraga family from besieged Sarajevo, so we are talking about this balance, of supporting each other in hard times. This is the fabric of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That we are truly finding ourselves next to each other when there is a need to be supportive of each other. Bosnia and Herzegovina known specifically about the war, but nobody is presenting these stories, individual human stories, which basically shows the other perspective of Bosnian and Herzegovinian society.
And I would like to add this, if I may. How do we test real, sincere, true friendship? How do we test as well loyalties, if you like? This is in times of crisis. This is in times of war, in times of persecution, in times of hunger, in times of tensions. And I think this test have the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, they have passed this test. They have shown true solidarity, being willing to risk their own lives, the security, and eventually during the Second World War, many Bosnian Muslims ended up in detention and concentration camps because they helped their Jewish neighbors and were deported.
Yes. If I may say my personal example, it just popped my mind. So basically, during the siege of Sarajevo, I was living in one building which has 7 apartments. It was truly multicultural building where we had Orthodox, Catholics, Muslims, and Jews living in the same building. And how we were organized in one period of the time is that because during the war we didn't have so much food, we didn't have so much resources to survive. Everybody were managing how they could manage back then. But in our building, in some period of the war, we had this way of living that every family had its own day when the family is making lunch for the whole building. Even with the little food that everybody had, we managed to survive. And this is basically the true fabric of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the stories that needs to be heard.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to jump in. This is close to my heart. For those who don't know, I'm Bosnian. I'm from Sarajevo. So a lot of these discussions and conversations are resonating deeply with me. My own grandfather was in a work camp in Germany during the Second World War. So I carry that deeply in me. One thing that I just wanted to just go back briefly to Purim, Sarajevo Purim, is going back to the book the coexistence of Muslims and Jews in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's a whole chapter on the specific concept of kefalet, right? Which I think kind of speaks not just sort of physically standing up for people, but also like morally and intellectually, because that is a concept where you're vouching for either a person or a whole community. So you have this whole group of Muslims or Muslim community vouching for these Jews completely with their money, with their faith conviction. So I just wanted to it goes even deeper into that connection, sort of vouching for this Jewish community during that time.
Well, yes. I mean, this is an integral part of the Ottoman system, integral part of the millet system as well. You know, respecting or giving these what we would today call freedom of faith to the religious communities living under Ottoman rule, allowing them to live their religion freely in exchange for paying taxes regularly. I mean, each of us are paying even taxes today. So wherever you live, you have to pay taxes. So this is. I mean, thanks as well, we have to say, to the Ottoman system, this multi-religious setting of Bosnia and Herzegovina was preserved. Very often I ask the question, the Austro-Hungary took over rule in Bosnia in 1878. Exactly. This is as a result of the Congress in Berlin, when the great powers met at that time to decide about the fate of all the territories that were used to be under Ottoman rule, and where the Ottomans have gradually withdrawn. Now, as well, at the Congress of Berlin, it was decided that Austria-Hungary would rule over Bosnia. And 1 year later, in 1879, the Austro-Hungarians organized a population census to get a demographic picture of Bosnia. And now many would guess, after more than 400 years of Ottoman rule, that the absolute majority is Muslim. But this was not the case. We had some a migration wave as a result of the Ottoman withdrawal. Many Muslims left Bosnia to migrate towards remaining Ottoman lands, but this is only a few percent. And this population census showed that the majority in Bosnia is actually are Orthodox Christians, 43%, 38% Muslims, 18% Catholics, and a Jewish minority. So this multi-religious setting of Bosnia has been preserved, providing as well, this would say, the safety for the survival of these different religious communities in Bosnia.
Thank you, Dževada.
Thank you.
Ellie, do you?
Yeah. So just building on that, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, but we were very lucky enough to go to the National Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we were able to see the Sarajevo Haggadah and speak with the curator. And we're hoping to speak with them a little bit more on a podcast later, but we would love it. If you could give a brief history of the Sarajevo Haggadah and sort of the events during the Second World War and during the war in the 90s that really showed as we were saying earlier, very, very closely and deeply the interconnectedness of history and culture and religion and between the Jews and Muslims and Bosnians, of course. So it would be great if maybe Dževada, if you wanted to start, and then Vladimir, you can add, if that makes sense.
Yes. So the Haggadah is really, it's such a precious document, a manuscript, a handwritten book, which was brought to Bosnia with the Sephardic Jews when they fled from Andalusia, or from Andalusia, from Spain and Portugal to Bosnia. So why is it so important that it's actually now a national in the National Museum? And evidently because it has this important, it's a part of the Bosnian heritage and the Bosnian culture. The Haggadah was used to perform several Jewish prayers. Vladimir might add to this. So it was used in the Jewish tradition. It has lots of colorful, beautifully drawn, how do you call this, pictures and designs.
Illuminated.
Very, very, thank you very much. And it was then sold from a Jewish family, was sold to the National Museum. I think it was in the 19th century. And why is this? Well, then we had two cases during the Second World War and during the last war. During the Second World War, as we already said, Bosnia was occupied by this fascist rule, where they even tried to get that book. And what the curator at the National Museum then tried, he took the book. Now there are different legends where he took the book. One of the legends is, which I like very much, that he took the book, brought it to a mosque outside of Sarajevo, and hid the Haggadah in between the different of Quran or Islamic books. And he's actually Korkut. He's a pious Muslim who is as well mentioned in Yad Vashem, and he and his wife as well saved their Jewish neighbors during the Second World War. And then during the last war in 1992-95, as the National Museum is directly on the front line to the Serb forces in Grbavica. So, and a few months ago, at the very beginning of the war, the Oriental Institute was burned down by the Serb forces. So there was this fear that the National Museum would as well be set in fire. As unfortunately, the last war was not only a war about territory, it was a war that implied as well destruction of everything that implies Bosnia and Herzegovina as a state, and the Islamic heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is why 1,000 mosques were completely destroyed or largely damaged, while, for example, the bridge in Mostar, unfortunately, was as well destroyed because it reminded of the Ottoman presence and of Islamic architecture. So even during the last war, the then acting director of the National Museum, Enver Imamovic, he is a historian, professor at the University of Sarajevo, he took the book and brought it to the central bank. And because he thought that this book is safe and would not be destroyed. There were attempts, which I heard from some members of the Jewish community, to get the book out of Bosnia, like to save it. But the local Bosnians said, no, this is an integral part of this is our identity. It belongs to us. We will try to save this book. It should remain in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the Haggadah is not only an integral part, I would say, of the rich Jewish tradition. It is really an integral part, an integral element of the culture of Bosnia and Herzegovina, of Bosnia and Herzegovina's identity. So when we talk about the rich cultural heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Haggadah is an integral part.
Haggadah is a story about the resilience. In this case of the book, but symbolically, resilience of the I would say Jewish people in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is very important manuscript, illuminated manuscript, which is quite worth, but not materialistically. It is worth in when it comes to our heritage. And in the other hand, Sarajevo Haggadah is one of the examples which is showing the rich history of Jewish people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it basically shows that Jewish people exist in Bosnia and Herzegovina for so long time. Sarajevo Haggadah has its way from Spain and Portugal to Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was not an easy way. It was traveling all around Europe until its final destination, which is Sarajevo. And as Dževada said, it saved couple of times, which we are very proud that in 1994, during the Passover in besieged Sarajevo, Haggadah was shown to the public, to the whole world, that it still exists in Sarajevo, and I think that was one powerful moment for Bosnia and Herzegovina in particular, but also for the Jewish community here. The importance of Haggadah we still can see today, unfortunately not in a good and positive way, as it was in recent time was misused by different actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina, even the civil society actors, the people from the museum, but also from the politicians here. Now the Haggadah became a part of geopolitical fights, and this is something what I personally believe it's not good. It's not good for the world's heritage, because Haggadah is not only the Bosnian and Jewish heritage; it is a world heritage. That's why the Germans in the Second World War wanted it so much, because they knew the value of this book. The chase for Haggadah is not like that one moment when the German army came into the museum and was seeking the Haggadah. They were seeking Haggadah throughout the Second World War here in Sarajevo. Haggadah and I will talk now from the perspective of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian Jews. As I said, it's a token where it shows that existence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's a proof of indigeneity of Jewish people here. In Bosnia and Herzegovina today is very important. Unfortunately, now we don't have any kind of control over the Haggadah, meaning that we cannot freely decide when we want to visit this, for us, very important book. So we are now in the same situation as every other tourist who comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have our terms where we can visit it. What I found very saddened is that since 1994 we didn't see Haggadah. We didn't read from the Haggadah, like for our Passover holiday, and this is something what I believe that needs to be changed, because it is firstly Jewish heritage, then Bosnian and Herzegovinian non-material heritage.
Thank you. There's so much that you brought up, both of you, in this that I would love to have a couple more hours to look at different aspects of what you all brought up in regard to Haggadah. I just want to reflect a little bit that we're living in the time where any symbolism or material symbolism of particular ethnicity or particular faith background is often being manipulated and abused for political purposes, right? Sometimes it is used to uphold certain values, right? And to lift up the voices. But often we're faced with this, and this is unfortunately present everywhere. I do want to mention that Haggadah was, this will be interesting for our listeners here in the US, that Metropolitan Museum desperately wanted to obtain Haggadah, right? And visited and tried different things. But I have to say, I am so proud of my Bosnian fellow men and women that that didn't happen, even though I'm sure some of that, the money that we would get for that would help with the museum development and other cultural projects. But it is so important to keep it where it is. And as you both said, it is integral part of Bosnian heritage and culture. So I would invite all who are traveling to visit Bosnia to go to the museum and visit Haggadah, and also at the same time experience incredible history of Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Neolithic times through Roman times to Ottoman times. So there is such richness that speaks to the history of Bosnia.
Sending Sarajevo Haggadah to Metropolitan Museum was in a way a good idea, because it would raise the money for the National Museum, which is one of the cultural institutions which are in big problems. They are not funded properly, nor by the state, nor by the other levels of political of the system of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But in other hand, there were a lot of afraid that once it goes away from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, it will never return. At least not originally is not going to be returned to Bosnia and Herzegovina. But yes, I truly believe that every citizen of the world needs to see Haggadah and to hear the story of the Haggadah, because it shows the story that even one book can change a lot, and a lot of things were happening around the Haggadah over the course of the history.
So I was just going to say that that not all of our listeners might remember or accurately remember the war in the ex-Yugoslavia. And I know, we've mentioned it a little bit, but I think it would be helpful for the conversation if you could kind of set the context a little bit. What was this period like for you? And also, generally sort of what were you could have, months and months and months of conversation about the origins, of this conflict, but just sort of a very general sense so that our listeners kind of understand the basics of what was happening and maybe what your lives were like during this period.
So during the war, I was a child. I was 7 years old when war started. So, but I don't know whether to say whether I'm lucky or unlucky to remember everything, like from that. But I do remember everything. And now, when I'm getting older, I realize that how big trauma I have at the moment. Like maybe because of this trauma and the whole war, I am now more focused on interreligious and intercultural relations and dialogue here, because I understood from the war, at least my small. My inner small child inside of me who was surviving this war understand is that was the problem back then. Even though that during the living, as I told you, the story about my building, we didn't felt these divisions in Sarajevo. Sarajevo was besieged. So that means that nobody from Sarajevo could go out of Sarajevo, because there was no way except the Tunnel of Hope, which was some underground tunnel below the airport of Sarajevo. Like we kids couldn't go there because it was restricted area. No food, no water, no electricity, no basic needs. That was the life which was experienced by every Sarajevan, which was in Sarajevo during the siege. But also from other side, I can remember this support between the people. As I said, even though that in our building everybody had a little bit, we combine that in one big pile and we create some kind of the lunch. Like when we need to go for the water because we didn't have the tap water, we had to go in far away places to get the canister of the water, and then etc. We were all going there, as a group, because this was the way how we could feel safe in the times where you can get killed very easily, not only by the shelling. I think your audience now maybe knows about this Sarajevo Safari, which is the very actualized story now. But we people from Sarajevo, we were considered as an animals, because we were the subject of hunt by the people, who wanted to hunt people back then. Yeah, so basically, Sarajevo Safari case is the case, as I said, which is very in the news now. Basically, the Serb forces who besieged Sarajevo were bringing down the war tourists who were allowed for certain amount of money to shoot people. So there were different ranges of prices. Like if you want to kill old person or middle-aged person, it's less pricey. If you want to kill a child or women, it's a little bit. They had to pay more. and allegedly a number of foreign tourists were coming to Sarajevo and basically paying to hunt, to shoot people who were walking around the city. You were in Sarajevo. You were in the Jewish cemetery. Jewish cemetery here in Sarajevo, above Sarajevo, was the first combat line, and aggressors were settled there. And as you may remember, like from the Jewish cemetery, you can see Sarajevo like on the hand of the palm. It's very close proximity, like because Jewish cemetery is like 2 kilometers away from the city center. So you could see everything, even with your bare eye, back then. So they used this leverage they had besieging Sarajevo to earn money. This is the one of the most perverse stories which were happening during the siege of Sarajevo. Like in some way, like we can understand the war. Like the war is like that you have an army who wants to occupy something, but they cannot occupy. They are trying their best to occupy it. But this, what was happening, is a pure perversion of the human mind.
Yeah, the Sarajevo Safari is a current issue. We have an Italian journalist who brought this to the court, and he has evidence that we have citizens from all over Europe, evidently rich citizens who could afford to go over the weekend, pay large amount of money to the Serb forces, and say, let me play this game and shoot down civilians. This is horrifying.
Maybe for your audience, the good comparison would be Hunger Games movie. Like it's similar to that. Bring the people to hunt them down.
I would like to add to this story that Vladimir said. So let's say the context of the 1990s, why this disintegration happened. Why did the war happen in Bosnia and Herzegovina? I mean, as Alison already said, we could organize a whole seminar at college about this topic, but just to briefly break it down. So Bosnia and Herzegovina used to be a republic of Yugoslavia, of the communist state of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia as a state existed actually already since the end of the First World War. So we have a Yugoslav period from 1918 until the 1990s. Bosnia declared its independence from Yugoslavia in 1992. And interesting as well for the history of Bosnia, just this is a small digression before I return back to but interesting for in general to know, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country that has as well witnessed several shifts of civilization. So from the medieval Bosnian kingdom to the dominantly Muslim Ottoman Empire, more than 400 years, a very short period of 40 years of dominantly Catholic Austria-Hungary, 1878 until 1918. Then we have the first Yugoslavia, but the name was initially Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, but 10 years later renamed into Kingdom of Yugoslavia, a dominantly Orthodox country. And then we have, after the Second World War, a communist state. So you see different civilizations, different dominant religions that ruled over this country. And this is as well, I would say, that the Bosnian citizens have learned to adapt themselves to these different political systems, but still to get along with each other, so that this Bosnian fabric has been tested throughout history several times. But as Vladimir used this keyword, which I like very much, resilience. Bosnian society has actually showed resilience. And all wars that happened in Bosnia were imported from outside. So it was not created that Bosnians locals said, we want to fight a war. Even the last war in the 1990s, what happened? So we have generally, this was the sentiment of the late 1980s, the sentiment of the end of communism in Eastern Europe, but as well in Southeastern Europe, in Yugoslavia. So a gradual sentiment, end of communism, the gradual introduction of democracy. And what happened in former Yugoslavia was that one republic after the other called for a referendum, which is a democratic instrument, a democratic means to ask its own citizens, what would you like to do? And it was initially Slovenia, which called for a referendum, and the citizens of Slovenia said, we want to secede. We do not want to be any longer integral part of Yugoslavia. Why is that? Because Yugoslavia actually, until Tito's death in 1980, was a decentralized federal state where the individual republics had certain rights over their territory. With the come to power of Slobodan Milošević, he wanted to centralize Yugoslavia again, to strengthen Belgrade, the military, and to put to concentrate the power in Belgrade. And this is where initially the Slovenes disagreed, called for a referendum, and declared independence. And this is why the Yugoslav National Army, which was under the rule of Belgrade and largely dominated by Serbia, entered Slovenia. And then later it was Croatia. Croatia as well issued a referendum where the citizens of Croatia said, we do not want any longer to live under Yugoslav rule. And the third country was then Bosnia and Herzegovina. Later it will be as well Montenegro, Macedonia, or Northern Macedonia, who would secede from former Yugoslavia. And now what is left is actually only Serbia. So, but why would then happen this war of horrific results, with ethnic cleansing, with the genocide in Srebrenica, with the destruction, massive destruction, I already said, of the heritage, of the cultural heritage of Bosnia? Because we had this, it was implied an ideology, a nationalist ideology, lived by Milošević and the whole regime of Serbia. The idea was that wherever Serbs live, this is Serbian territory, that the core land of Serbia is actually Bosnia and Herzegovina. And within this nationalist ideology, not only about ruling the territory or controlling the territory, it is as well the idea of the sentiment of that time, actually what we call today Islamophobia, the idea that the Muslims living in Bosnia and are a threat to Europe. We had these keywords of ante muriali Christianitatis, these keywords that the Serbs are the defenders of Christianity in Europe, that the local Muslims, why they called local Bosnian Muslims as Turks, naming them Turks. Why? To have this connotation of the Ottoman presence, because from the Serbian perspective, and this is how, it is about history, how historical sources, which historical sources are chosen to be read, how these sources are read, and how they are interpreted, and then how they are taught in schools, at university, but as well how they are, so to say, as well conveyed in the media. So what happened is that we had this greater nationalist Serbian ideology, which said Bosnia and Herzegovina has no right to secede. It's an integral part of Serbia. And this is why until today, with the end of the war, with Republika Srpska, as you know, Bosnia and Herzegovina, as a result of the war, was split in two, was preserved as a state, which is important. But we have two entities, the Republika Srpska and the Federation. And this ideology, this greater Serbian ideology, is very alive until today. We just had, I think it was 1.5, I think in June, it will be 2 years ago, when we had the all Serb gathering in Belgrade, where the same topics were raised again, how the Serbs are in danger, that the Muslims are a danger for Europe. And very often I say, as I am from Bosnia and Herzegovina originally, I say, we Bosnian Muslims, we're not getting tired, but how often, for how many years do we have to show to the world that we are indigenous European Muslims? That for us, our Jewish, Orthodox, Catholic, or whoever neighbor is something that is not disturbing, is that our interpretation of Islam is an open-minded interpretation of Islam, where living with the other is an integral part of our everyday life. But unfortunately, we live in the 21st century, unfortunately, the century as well of Islamophobia, and still, unfortunately, as well of anti-Semitism. We should not as well forget that, unfortunately, Croatia joined Serbia in this nationalist ideology. They wanted as well to have a part of Croatia for themselves. So Serbia wanted a part of it for themselves, and Croatia for themselves. So we have this. Now, this is why, unfortunately, today we say why Bosnia and Herzegovina today has this element of political instability. It goes as well due to the fact that Serbia and Croatia interfere internally into Bosnia and
And
Herzegovina.
the same messages
politics.
you were able to hear now in the Washington in recent days, you know.
Vladimir, you mean Washington, Washington, like U.S. government,
Yes,
or are
I'm
you talking about the visit
visit
from Republika Srpska?
of delegation of Republic of Srpska, yes.
We heard lies. I mean, these statements are historically seen. Are pure lies, saying that Bosnian Muslims established detention camps where they brought children and killed them. This is clear fake news, nothing else. And we have this for decades, trying to impose that Bosnian Muslims are radicalizing themselves, that they are potential terrorists for Europe. Show me, give me the proofs, give me the facts.
So that's, thank you. What happened globally in terms of, and I just want to, like a little digression here, is the sisterhood is not using terminology Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. We're staying away from that terminology because both are extremely politicized and weaponized. So we want to make sure that we separate political interpretations of this from how it affects human beings and societies. So we are calling it anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish bigotry, and want to stay. So we are determined to stay with that terminology as we go. Of course, we address both of these phenomena, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, as they're being interpreted or defined around the world. But I wanted to just, if I may, just bring you back a little bit. I think what's important is, Dževada, you are a professor, you're an author, you're a teacher, and at the same time, you're very connected with the main institution for Muslim community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Riyaset of Islamic Community. And Vladimir, you are director of La Benevolentia and very connected with Jewish community, Center of Jewish Community in Sarajevo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So could you tell us a little bit about that sort of balance that you're establishing between your work in your interfaith realm and your intellectual realm and leading organizations, and working with the leadership of these two communities?
If I may start, sorry, Dževada, there are no problems between the leadership of the Islamic and Jewish communities here, because the president of the Jewish community and Grand Mufti of the Islamic community has wonderful relations, friendly relations. They are friends, first of all. So just let me tell you one situation. After the 7th of October, there was the influx of anti-Semitism, or as you like to say, anti-Jewish narrative here. The first thing what was happened by the Islamic community was that Grand Mufti called our president, and they had a coffee, and they showed to the world that geopolitical situation is not going to harm the relations between these two communities. And this is, I think, very important to say. That means that, at least for me, I will not speak in Dževada's name, but yes, that is the picture. Yes, I will not speak in Dževada's name, but for my work, this fact is making my life and my activism quite easy, because we have the support of the main religious institutions, both Islamic and Jewish, but also its leaders and other members of the communities, more and less. Like not everybody agrees with everything.
We understand that. Yes.
Yes, Tahia, you mentioned these different realms, working in academia, working as well in research, and then as well giving a contribution to the religious community. None of these realms exist in a vacuum. This is my professional path that somehow, these paths were somehow opened in front of me, and I accepted them because this is what I live. I like to research. I like to write. I like to teach. I love learning from my students. But I like to as well to serve the civil society. And I had the privilege that I was given the opportunity to serve my community, the Islamic community, to run the Office for International Cooperation. Previously, I was the director of the institute, the Research Institute of the Islamic Community, Institute for the Islamic Tradition of Bosniaks. We on purpose gave this research institute that name because the purpose of that institute was to do research about what we call the Islamic tradition of Bosniaks, meaning how the Bosnian Muslims have lived, interpreted, taught Islam the last centuries. To affirm this, so to say, interpretation of Islam, this living of Islam, this practice of Islam, in comparison, because we are aware as well, with the end of communism, with the opening of the borders, with the war, there were attempts to teach the Bosnian Muslims the proper way of Islam. But this is where, I would like to use this word resilience, where the Bosnian Muslim community has shown resilience against these different teachings. So we opened that research institute where we did research to affirm this way of practicing Islam. And then afterwards, I was appointed to run the Office for International Cooperation. And I'm very privileged to have witnessed the task of my office is to strengthen international cooperation of the Islamic community with embassies, with international organizations, with researchers, with universities, with academia, but as well with the religious communities. And this is what I want to say. I'm so privileged that I have witnessed this intense cooperation of the Grand Mufti with the president of the Jewish community. I had the privilege to travel with them. We had, as Vladimir announced, the signing of, in January 2023, was it? 2024, 2023, on the International Holocaust Day, on the 27th of January. On purpose, we chose Srebrenica, where the memorial center is for the genocide in Srebrenica. We invited Menachem Rosensaft, the president of the Jewish community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Jakob Finci, and Vladimir was as well there, to sign the principles of communication between Kavazovic, and Kavazovic is a surname of the Grand Mufti, and Rosensaft, the Kavazovic-Rosensaft principles of communication, to send a message to the world. We want to continue this Jewish-Muslim dialogue. We think there is no alternative. This is very important, particularly in these hard times that we are witnessing. Last week, I was in Sarajevo, and I'm talking to you from Strasbourg, actually. I had the privilege to be here at the University of Strasbourg for a year. I'm the fellow of the French government, and I'm doing research here. But last week, I was in Sarajevo because this is something that we are organizing as well every year. We are hosting a gathering for women in diplomacy. So we had ambassadors, female ambassadors, women in diplomacy, in foreign embassies and international organizations in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but as well women working for Bosnian state institutions. And our VIP guest, our special guest, was Rahela Džidić. Rahela Džidić was recently elected as head of the Jewish community in Sarajevo. She told me that day that she's the first woman to be elected at the head of the Jewish community in Sarajevo after 460 years, since the existence of the Jewish community in Sarajevo, not since the existence of Jewish history, but since the Jewish community in Sarajevo was established. So after 460 years, she was the first woman now to run this community. So I invited her to be my special guest, as we were only women, and we talked about Jewish-Muslim relations in Bosnia with our ladies who were our guests. So, and this makes my life, as Vladimir said, so rich, so colorful, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Let's not
That's such an
forget
amazing
the
Thank
book
you, Alison.
which
Thank you,
Dževada
Alison.
is author, Coexistence of Jewish and Muslims here, which is a very important book. Maybe you don't see it now, but for the future, you know, it is very, very important that we have these relations publicized, you know. Also, we have, because primarily in the Jewish community, I'm dealing with the culture, and this is something what Dževada don't know. And I was supposed to call her tomorrow regarding this, that we are thinking about creating an opera about Sarajevo Purim, like full-time opera. We already started the conversation with the composer and with the person who is going to make libretto. Sorry, Dževada, for announcing this to you in the live podcast, but you know, and we want to publicize, and we want,
We have
you know,
exclusive
you know, the
moment.
culture and
Yes.
art is powerful tool. You know, books is something what is,
Wow.
you know,
I
the
love
book is something what
opera.
is going to stay for a long time present. You know, opera is going to stay for a long time present. You know, like, and we want to tell the true stories about the relations. And because I personally, I believe, you know, that it is very important to underline these relations in the world, especially in today's world where everything is polarized, where facts are negated. You know, when politics and populist politics basically took over the everyday life.
I love opera very deeply, so I will come to
Yeah.
Sarajevo
The
for
only
the
problem with
premiere
the
for
opera,
sure. That is
the only
incredible.
problem with this opera is that you know, when thinking about the roles, they are all male roles. You know, and this is something what what we need also to change, because, you know, like the importance of the women in everyday life of the religious communities is huge. It was invisible, you know, back then, you know, like in these times, but it was very important, as the women are the drive of one community.
I just want to a couple of things. I want to catch a couple of things that happened as Dževada was speaking about post-war period, or as communism fell in Yugoslavia, of people coming to teach proper Islam to Bosnia. She used quotation marks. For those who are listening to this and didn't see her do that, I just want to emphasize that. Uh, in no way did she imply that there is that proper way for Islam, but that she
Oh,
was.
thank you, Tahia. Thank you. This is very important. Yes, yes.
Yes. And I also just want to say that I did see that segment on women that were just last week, Dževada, and what Rahela said was really struck me, is that there is so much beauty and so much rich experience in Muslim Jewish relations in Bosnia, that our goal now, the biggest goal, is to transfer this knowledge to young generations. And I think that's exactly it. And I also am so happy that Vladimir is such a cool musician guy that can have a great outreach to young people, and I'm making it like that, Vladimir, because I think young people love to communicate with cool people. So it's great that they have you to really sort of convey this message, and Dževada to have you with all your knowledge and charisma and warmth is incredible. So we're very blessed and
Tahia,
honored that
sorry
you
for
are doing the work
interruption.
you're doing.
What is truly sad, Dževada and myself, we were in Munich a couple of months ago talking about interreligious life in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what was sad for me is that, like Germany is known as a Western, civilization, democracy, and everything. And the people from Germany came to us, and they were so frustrated because the dialogue between the Muslim and Jewish communities does not work in Munich, particularly, and in most of the Germany, and and at the same time in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is known, and at least at least the narrative is going outside in the Western world that this is a country where Jews are discriminated. I mean, this is the discrimination of the minorities is other political topics, like that. But the narrative is that Jews cannot freely walk, cannot freely express their religion because of the Muslim, because of the everything, and this is simply not true. Like now we are in the situation where one country which is not in the European Union, the one country which is known as ethnically divided country with homogeneous communities, has better dialogue than the whole of the Western world. And this is something, what is truly sad for me, like, and I'm saying sad, I'm proud on it, but it is sad, like, because Bosnia and Herzegovina at the same time depends on the Western world and all the political courses which Western world is basically taking. What we see now, it's not good. Like what we see now, it's very frustrating, and it is something what I don't recognize the world anymore. I don't recognize what is happening. I cannot accept what is happening now in the world regarding the divisions between the different people.
And you don't have in Sarajevo or all over Bosnia and Herzegovina, you don't have the police in front of the synagogues. You don't have the police in front of the Jewish museum. There is no need to watch out because, it is, so this is that the Jews indeed feel safe. There is no need that there is a police in front of. And we did regarding the book that was published now in English language. We have this expanded edition in English language with a timeline and so on and so forth, with lots of photos, lots of witness reports. We did a book launch in beginning of December in Sarajevo at the Bosniak Institute, where we met, actually, you remember? Last summer, at the very same institute where we had the presentation, our meeting. Yes, there was this book launch. Vladimir gave as well his contribution. And the president of the Jewish community, Jakob Finzi, we had as well Franjo Topic, Professor Franjo Topic from the Catholic Church. We had as well a friend of mine, an Orthodox theologian who just had a car issue, so he couldn't come. So basically on that book launch, the representatives of all 4 traditional communities of Bosnia and Herzegovina were there and gave their contribution. This is what I'm very proud, and this is Sarajevo. This is Bosnia and Herzegovina, that we share the floor and we talk about our common values. We talk about this rich cultural heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I'm really very proud of this book, and I hope that we can have more gatherings to talk about the contents of this book, to talk about this together. Perhaps we could have as well, to have Vladimir, Rahela Dživić and me on a podium and discuss about this shared history and everyday coexistence.
And also in that sense, I need to say another example which happened a couple of months ago. Someone wrote in front of the Jewish Museum, "Free Palestine," and Jews get out of the country. Like what was happened was amazing. It's a truly unique example in the world. That lady who works nearby, she's who works nearby in hijab, came and cleaned that signs. And she was really harassed by lots of people, for doing that. But her reaction for it, this is not how you fight for the Palestine. Hating other is not how you fight against anything, and these are these bright examples that we can that we are experiencing and living here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, particularly in Sarajevo. And I believe this is the richness that we are having, comparing to most of the European Union and the United States as well.
I think that segues perfectly into the last question that we wanted to ask, which is sort of considering the world that we all live in now. what are the lessons that you would say that we should all carry with us from the history of Bosnia, of Jews, Muslims, and Christians in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 500 years ago and now? What would you say we should all take
Dževada,
with
please.
us?
I would like to sum it like this, that there is no alternative than to fight for truth and justice together, to share these universal values, and to raise awareness to others who do not know, who are not aware of this, to spread this idea of universal values, that we belong to each other, that we have a common heritage, a common responsibility, and that there is that. As I said, for us in Bosnia and Herzegovina and abroad, it's important because we are facing fake news, we are facing the stereotypes, these prejudices, that we have to fight together this fight for truth
If
and
you remember
justice.
from your travels, I think it was the last days of your travels when we were speaking. Like we spent a couple of days together. You saw a lot. We all spoke a lot regarding all the issues that Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing. I told you in the bus, like when you go home, like just tell what you saw, like. And I think like this is enough, because my perspective. I'm not speaking in your name, of course, but I think that you also like how actually Bosnia and Herzegovina is functioning. Like we were in Sarajevo, in Mostar, we were in different places here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Basically you saw that one society which wants to live freely at last. Because after the end of the war, like we didn't get our freedom. Like the war continued without the weapons. Ethnical divisions from the politicians. Like constant threats of the war, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, Christianophobia as well is very present here on the political level. But at the same time, the people who are living, we have all same challenges. Like economical challenges, like political challenges. People are mostly poor here, meaning that they cannot earn enough to stretch throughout the whole month with the food, with the bills, with everything. And this is something what we all from Bosnian and Herzegovinian society are sharing, regardless of who we are and in which part of Bosnia we do live. And I truly believe that every citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina aspires to live normally, freely, that can contribute to their family, to live normally, and this is something what is bonding, the population of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have other issue. Our issue are politicians, is the political system, populists who are building their political careers on the back of the division.
Sounds very familiar. We are
Yes,
in the
but we have
US, and that
experience,
sounds very, very
like
familiar. So,
decades old experience.
and I think for that reason, even more is important to learn from from two of you, and understand this. So I just want to say thank you so much. I wish we'll probably pull out some of these quotes from both of you as sort of a slogan, fighting for truth, justice, and equality, and fighting for each other, and trying to continue this. I just want to, while we are all here, I just want to invite all those who are listening and would like to possibly have Dževada and Vladimir, Dr. Garić, and Vladimir come and present the book and have a conversation at your institution, at your university. Please let us know, and we would love to have some opportunities for them to come and visit the US and share all this with us in person. So thank you so much, and it's
Thank
an
you very
honor to be
much.
with both of you.
It will be our honor
The honor is my side.
to have the opportunity to speak about more. And I promise I will not bring my cat. Like as you saw that she was all over the podcast, but she's my little assistant on the Zoom meetings and online meetings as well.
She's great. We loved it.
Yes. Yes.
Take
Thanks to
care.
both of you.
Thank
Thanks to
you.
your listeners. It was a great honor to talk to you, to talk together with Vladimir. I'm fully at your disposal to continue our cooperation. If there is anything else I can do for you, for your listeners, for the sake of truth and justice and equality, I would be more than willing to do that. All the best to you.
And if I
All
may
the
add,
best.
like to the
Thank you so
American
much.
Thank you.
audience, like you need to be strong and you need to be supportive to each other. I believe this is the key of functioning society. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for inviting us for this talk.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions you've always wanted to ask a Jew or a Muslim but didn't know how or where to go? Ask us at podcast@sosspeace.org. We don't speak for everyone in our communities, but we're happy to give you answers from our own perspectives. And to learn more about the sisterhood, subscribe to the newsletter on our website, sosspeace.org.
If this conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you think, we'd love for you to share it, leave a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The opinions of speakers and hosts do not always reflect official positions of the sisterhood. All rights to video and audio content belong to the sisterhood. Until next time, keep listening,
Keep learning,
and keep provoking peace.